There's an oil you can buy for $3 that eliminates every scratch, every scuff, every dull patch, and every wear track on any hardwood floor, any hardwood furniture, any wooden surface in your home, permanently, without sanding, without refinishing, without a single piece of professional equipment, and without vacating your house for 3 days while toxic fumes cure in an enclosed space. Not a scratch concealer that fills the gouge with colored wax and wipes off the next time someone mops the floor. Not a surface polish that adds a temporary sheen that disappears under foot traffic within 2 weeks. A penetrating oil that enters the wood fiber itself, rehydrates the cellular structure that UV exposure and foot traffic have been desiccating for years, and cross-links inside the grain into a flexible protective polymer that is physically part of the wood rather than a coating sitting on top of it. The kind of restoration that takes a 20-year-old oak floor with visible wear lanes down every hallway, gray dull patches beneath every window, and deep scratches across the kitchen entrance, and returns it to the warm amber glow it had the week it was installed. The floor refinishing industry in the United States generates over $2.8 billion in annual revenue. A professional hardwood floor refinishing service for an average 200 square foot room costs between $600 and $100 to $400 in labor and materials. A full house floor refinishing project runs between $3,000 and $8,000 depending on square footage and finish type. Furniture restoration services charge between $300 and $900 per piece for scratch repair and surface restoration on hardwood tables, cabinets, and chairs. Every dollar of that revenue depends on a single carefully maintained consumer belief that hardwood surface restoration requires professional sanding equipment, professional coating systems, professional licensing, and the recurring payment that follows every time the finish degrades again. That belief is the product. The scratches are just the mechanism that delivers you to it, and the oil that permanently dismantles that belief costs $3 per application, has been in documented use since ancient Egypt, and works through a wood chemistry that every furniture maker, every restoration professional, and every flooring contractor has known about for centuries, while ensuring it never appeared in plain language on the advice card they leave behind after a $2,400 service call. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. Hit subscribe and the bell right now. This is where we open the vaults they welded shut. The hardwood restoration industry did not suppress penetrating oil because it was inferior to the polyurethane systems they sell. They suppressed it because its widespread adoption would eliminate the primary revenue driver of their entire industry, the scheduled refinishing cycle. Polyurethane, the dominant finish applied by contractors across North America, is a surface coating. It does not penetrate wood fiber. It sits on top as a rigid plastic film bonded by mechanical adhesion rather than chemical integration. The moment that barrier is breached, by a scratch, a worn patch, or a hairline crack from seasonal wood movement, moisture enters beneath the film and produces the bubbling, peeling, and gray delamination that characterizes an aged polyurethane floor. When it fails across the entire floor simultaneously, requiring full sanding and recoating. The refinishing cycle is not a consequence of wood degradation. It is a consequence of coating failure, and the coating was selected specifically because it fails in a way that requires professional intervention. Penetrating oil works on the opposite principle. It becomes part of the wood itself, filling the cellular structure with a cross-linked polymer that flexes with seasonal movement, repairs locally when scratched, and is maintained indefinitely with simple reapplication. No sanding, no stripping, no professional equipment. The industry chose polyurethane not because it is better for your floor. They chose it because it fails in a way that generates $2.8 billion in annual revenue. Penetrating oil does not. Let me take you back to where this oil was first put to work on wood, not in a furniture workshop, not in a flooring laboratory, but in the boatyards and timber stores of ancient Egypt, where craftsmen working with imported Lebanese cedar and African hardwoods discovered the same oil chemistry that protects your floors today. Egyptian woodworkers building the elaborate cedar furniture, funerary boats, and architectural timber elements documented in tomb inventories from as early as 1500 BC used pressed plant oils, primarily linseed extracted from the flax plant and castor oil from the ricinus plant as the primary surface treatment for finished wood. Painted wooden artifacts recovered from the tomb of Tutankhamun, analyzed by conservation scientists at the British Museum in 2010, showed evidence of oil penetration into the wood fiber beneath the painted surface layer, a deliberate primer treatment that had kept the wood dimensionally stable and free from insect damage for over 3,300 years of burial in the warm, dry conditions of the Valley of the Kings. 3,300 years of wood preservation from a plant oil costing the equivalent of pennies per application. The craftsmen who built those artifacts did not have polyurethane. They had observation and patience, and they understood, through generations of empirical practice, that wood treated with penetrating oil from the inside out outlasted wood sealed from the outside in by orders of magnitude. Move forward to medieval Europe, where the great furniture traditions of Flanders and northern Italy produced work that has survived intact for 600 years in museum collections. The oak furniture of Flemish guild workshops of the 14th and 15th centuries, documented in guild production records preserved in the Bruges city archives, was finished exclusively with linseed oil, sometimes boiled with lead oxide to accelerate drying, sometimes combined with natural resins from pine and copal trees. Application protocols are described in extraordinary detail, multiple thin coats applied by hand with wool cloth, each coat allowed to penetrate fully before the next, the final surface burnished with the palm of the hand to develop the deep, warm luster museum visitors still admire today. Those pieces have survived 600 years of humidity cycling and temperature change without delaminating, without peeling, without a single refinishing intervention, because the oil lived inside the wood, not on top of it. The link to the complete Forbidden Camping Vault is in the description right now. Inside, you will find over 12 guides covering everything the industry has buried for decades. The biochar soil amendment that permanently triples garden yield for $3. The crystalline foundation repair powder that makes cracked concrete 18% stronger than new. The diatomaceous earth insect formula that makes the $22 billion pest control industry irrelevant. The tannic acid rust converter the $400 billion auto parts market suppressed for 80 years. The citric acid pipe restoration formula that restores 96% of original pipe diameter for $1. The acrylic resin paint restoration compound that replaces a $5,000 respray for $3. All of it in one place. 12 complete guides, 0 filler, every page built for immediate real-world action. The link is in the description right now, but do not go anywhere yet, because the molecular mechanism by which a $3 penetrating oil repairs hardwood scratches from the inside out, without sanding, without stripping, without any professional equipment, is the part the floor refinishing industry is most terrified of you understanding. Here's exactly what happens inside a scratched hardwood surface when penetrating oil is applied, and why the repair is permanent when every wax filler, every scratch pen, and every surface polish the industry sells, you provides only days or weeks of concealment. A scratch in hardwood is not surface damage in the way that a scratch in paint is surface damage. Wood is a cellular biological material composed of hollow fiber tubes, tracheids and vessel elements, oriented along the grain direction with lateral ray cells connecting them across the grain. When a scratch opens the surface of finished wood, it severs these cellular structures, exposing the hollow interior of the fiber tubes to the surface environment. The cellular walls of the exposed fibers immediately begin absorbing atmospheric moisture, causing them to swell asymmetrically at the scratch edge, which is what produces the raised, rough texture of an old scratch that has been through seasonal humidity cycling. A surface filler, wax, polyurethane patch, colored marker, sits in the scratch channel without entering the cellular structure. It has no bond to the fiber walls, no flexibility to move with the wood's seasonal expansion and contraction, and no mechanism to address the swollen fiber edges at the scratch boundary. It falls out, wipes off, or cracks within weeks to months. Penetrating oil, specifically tongue oil, the pure pressed oil of the tongue tree nut, enters the scratch channel and is drawn by capillary action directly into the hollow fiber tubes of the exposed cellular structure. Inside the fiber, tongue oil undergoes polymerization, a cross-linking reaction triggered by contact with atmospheric oxygen that converts the liquid oil into a flexible solid polymer filling every cellular void. A study published in Wood Science and Technology in 2011 measured tongue oil penetration depth in 4 common hardwood species: oak, maple, walnut, and cherry. The oil penetrated an average of 2.8 millimeters below the wood surface across all species, filling between 65 and 82% of the available cellular void volume depending on species density. The cross-linked polymer inside the cellular structure does not wash out, does not wipe away, and does not crack under seasonal wood movement because it has the same flexibility coefficient as the surrounding wood fiber. The scratch is not concealed. The cellular structure that was damaged by the scratch is physically filled with a polymer that is now part of the wood. When the surface is buffed after oil application, the swollen fiber edges at the scratch boundary are compressed back into alignment by the friction heat generated, and the filled cellular structure beneath them holds them in position permanently. The visible scratch disappears not because something was placed over it, but because the biological material that defined it was restored from within. A separate 2016 analysis in the European Journal of Wood and Wood Products compared long-term scratch resistance and repairability of tongue oil, finished hardwood panels against polyurethane finished panels under standardized abrasion and impact testing. After 500 abrasion cycles simulating 10 years of residential foot traffic, polyurethane panels showed 34% surface haze increase and required full sanding and recoating to restore. Tung oil panels showed 12% surface haze increase and were fully restored to original gloss by a single reapplication of tung oil with a cotton cloth. No sanding, no stripping, no professional equipment, 20 minutes of effort. Here is exactly what to do, and the simplicity of this process will make every floor refinishing invoice you have ever paid feel like a deliberate extraction. Step 1. Purchase pure tung oil from any hardware store, woodworking supply, or online retailer. The label must say pure tung oil, not tung oil finish, not Danish oil, not teak oil, all of which are heavily diluted blends with petroleum solvents and drying agents that reduce penetration depth and long-term performance. Pure tung oil costs between $15 and $25 per liter. 1 liter treats approximately 25 to 30 square meters of hardwood floor surface. Cost per square meter of scratch restoration, approximately $0.60 to $0.80. Step 2. Clean the scratched surface thoroughly with a dry microfiber cloth to remove dust, wax residue, and surface contamination. Do not use water-based cleaners immediately before oil application. Residual moisture in the wood surface will compete with the oil for cellular void space and reduce penetration depth. Step 3. For deep scratches with raised fiber edges, run the flat of your thumbnail firmly along the scratch length before oil application. The pressure compresses the swollen fiber edges and opens the scratch channel for maximum oil penetration. Do not sand. Sanding removes wood fiber and leaves abrasive particles in the cellular structure that interfere with oil bonding. Step 4. Apply a small amount of pure tung oil directly to the scratch area using a cotton cloth or your fingertip, working the oil firmly into the scratch channel with circular pressure. The oil will appear to darken the wood immediately as it enters the cellular structure. This is correct and expected. Apply enough oil that the scratch area remains visibly wet for 2 to 3 minutes. Step 5. Allow the oil to penetrate undisturbed for 20 to 30 minutes. During this period, the capillary action draws the oil deep into the fiber tubes beneath the scratch surface. Do not wipe the surface during this period. Step 6. After the penetration period, buff the treated area firmly with a clean, dry cotton cloth using circular motions. The friction heat generated by buffing accelerates the initial polymerization of the oil at the surface layer, compresses the swollen fiber edges back into alignment, and develops the characteristic warm luster of an oil-finished surface. The scratch will be visibly reduced or eliminated after a single application. For deep scratches or heavily worn areas, apply a second coat 24 hours after the first, following the same process. For whole floor maintenance on an oil-finished floor, apply tung oil to the entire surface by section using the same cloth method, allow 20 minutes of penetration, and buff dry. The process takes approximately 45 minutes for an average room and restores the original depth of color and luster completely. Safety note. As with all drying oils, cloths soaked with tung oil can spontaneously combust if left crumpled. Always spread used cloths flat to dry completely outdoors or submerge in water in a sealed metal container before disposal. This is not optional. It is a life safety requirement. Now you know what every furniture restoration craftsman, every flooring contractor, and every museum conservator knows and applies to the surfaces they care about most, while charging you $2,400 to apply polyurethane to yours. You know that the refinishing cycle that brings the contractor back to your house every 8 years is a consequence of the coating system they chose, not of how hardwood ages. You know that a $3 application of pure tung oil repairs scratches from the inside out, restores worn surfaces without sanding, and maintains any hardwood surface indefinitely with 20-minute reapplication sessions that any person can perform with a cotton cloth. The $2.8 billion floor refinishing industry did not lose this knowledge. They built their entire service model in the space where this knowledge used to be. Share this video with every homeowner who has ever received a floor refinishing quote that made them consider carpet instead. Subscribe if you want to keep pulling knowledge out of the vaults that billion-dollar industries have spent decades sealing shut. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside will make this one look like the opening act.